good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Plano Independent School District Sports Network. I'm Kevin Long. The judge, John Payton, is usually in riding shotgun with me, but the judge still recuperating from an eye surgery he had earlier in the week, which, here's why I hate to see that, other than you hate to see anybody get eye surgery, but this is a show he really wanted to be involved with because we are going to be interviewing, let's say, maybe perhaps icons of Plano would be a good way to put it. We're going to interview Coach John Clark. We're also going to have Coach Tom Kimbrough, and of course they pretty much, I guess you would say, made Plano football into an institution. First off, we got Coach Clark here. Coach, always great to see you.
Good evening, Kevin. Good to be here.
Coach, why don't we start with this? I know virtually everybody in Plano knows what you've done here, what you've accomplished. Why don't you start out by telling us what are some of the things you enjoy doing these days in terms of coming around, watching the games, getting involved in certain things? What do you do?
Well, I see a good many ball games, not just football, but the other athletic events along too. It's just been part of my life for a long time. As you know, I was athletic director for the school district for 27 years after I hung up my coaching outfit, and so I enjoy watching all of it and keeping up with them. It's a little harder to do now than it used to be. I think there were 6 coaches in Plano when I came, and obviously that's
got a few more here now.
Changed considerably. And one of those was a lady. She had the girls' athletic program, and then we had a couple of junior high coaches and 3 in high school, and that was it.
Mm-hmm. We joke about this. You were telling me how when you came to Plano, you had one high school with 500 kids.
That's true.
Now you've got 3 high school that graduate well over 1,000 in a class every year. What kind of things are you thinking about when you look at the growth of this Plano community over the years? Because it has grown.
Well, it has. Of course, I have so many good memories, fond memories of those early times when Plano was small and knew everybody in the school district. I was the science teacher, and all the students at the school had to come through my science class if they were going to graduate, I guess. So
you pretty much knew everybody in the community after a few years.
Yeah, knew all the parents and a lot of people, most of the people in the community, and all of the people were really involved in the schools. Everything in the community kind of was around the hub of the schools, and then when the second year I was here, we won the state championship, so that really brought a lot of enthusiasm and interest and involvement in the schools and support of the young people. Young people were fortunate, the coaches were, but the young people were fortunate to come along, I think, in those days. And the school district and the city both had a lot of foresight. Much more than I did when I came, I'm sure, but they really planned well for the future, and I was just fortunate to come along and be part of it.
You mentioned being a science teacher. You went on to a pretty semi-remarkable career in administration and coaching. Did you enjoy being a science teacher?
I always like kids and the students, and I still see a few of them now that I had in those 40-some-odd years ago around. So, coaches kind of filled in where they were needed. And at that particular time, they needed a science teacher. I taught some other things as well, but in Plano, most of mine was in the science.
Well, I guess what I'm getting at, did you miss the classroom once you left the classroom?
Well, it was kind of like when I got out of coaching. Do you miss it? It seemed like part of your life and what you've been involved in changes, but the way Plano was growing, you really didn't have a lot of time to look at the past very long because things were moving ahead.
You were so busy doing what you were doing in Plano, and I'm sure, the 27 years, it seemed probably like every year you were putting in a new school, a new stadium, having to hire a new coaching staff. That must have been a pretty good challenge.
Well, that's true, and we were moving up in classification, so We were what everybody referred to as 2A at that time. It's 3A now, as far as enrollment is concerned. But we spent, while I was here coaching, 4 years in 2A, 4 years in 3A, 4 years in 4A. So we were having to keep our program moving along to be able to compete as we encountered the larger schools. And fortunately, we seemed to have the kind of athletes that could make that adjustment, and we were able to hold our own.
Can you still remember anything about, shall we say, the intimate parts of a cell or the top row of the periodic chart of elements? Can you remember any of that stuff from science, or that? Can you remember lesson planning, shall we say?
I wouldn't want to have to take a test on it.
Not today. Well, Coach, fortunately, neither you nor I have to take those kind of tests anymore at the stage of our career. Tell you what, we're going to be back with Coach Clark. We'll have some more with him, ask him a little bit about another passion of him, which is getting involved with FCA. But anyhow, why don't we take this time out? We're back at you right after these messages. With Coach John Clark, who pretty much started Plano in the direction they wanted to roll. Now, Coach, you do an awful lot of work with FCA these days. Why don't you explain a little bit about what your pretty much priorities are?
Well, I'm still involved, primarily as an encourager of the Fellowship of Christian Athletes program. We started it some 40 plus years ago here, and just when FCA was getting started in the schools, and in particular in the Dallas Metroplex. Coach Landry, as you probably know, was very instrumental in helping us get started. And
you had a real good rapport with him.
Well, yeah, obviously he was a role model for us to begin with. As a coach and as a Christian coach, he was kind of person you wanted to be like, and he certainly was a great organizer and all the things he's famous for, and we tried to bring that down to the high school level, and the fact that it let us, for myself at least, share spiritual values with other coaches and with athletes. So it was, when I first started about it, I was excited because something that had always been important to me, and so I've stayed involved every year since then, and still try to be there as a supporter and encourager, and doing what I can to keep the program going. And we've seen it grow tremendously, and nearly all of our schools, almost 100% of them, have a program that's available for coaches and players that want to participate in it.
Mm-hmm. You know, how much did it help at the beginning, having a celebrity of the magnitude Tom Landry, that you could, I guess, pretty much do a rapport you had with him, call upon him just about every time, and he'd work in his schedule just as quick as he could?
Well, he was busy, but he was really gave a lot of his time and energies and efforts, and as I said, came out here and met with our players. The first meeting we ever had, spring 1968, and so he was certainly an inspiration to us, and you can see what the program has done throughout the Metroplex.
The John Clark run every year. You know, what are some of the things recently you've been involved in? And I mean, we could, if you wanted to go back 40 years, we could do all kinds of things, but just recently that I guess excite you the most. I know we get out here for the John Clark run every year.
Well, that is probably our principal fundraiser event, which lets us bring the programs to the school. We have to register our huddles with the national office, and so we can do that, and sponsor programs. We have several during the year. We have a kickoff breakfast for our senior high athletes, boys and girls, and we do that at the beginning of school each year. And other programs along. We have one specifically for coaches, encouragement, and bring in some renowned coaches that share the same commitment as we do through the FCA program, and so I can remember a lot of them, and always encouraging to me, and I really appreciate the coaches here in Plano who give their time to sponsor the huddles in each of the schools.
And you have hired some good ones here, Coach.
Yeah, I had some great ones, and still do. We've had some really good ones move on, and we've had some really good ones to come along and fill their shoes.
I'll ask you one final thing, Coach. I know you're quite often at the games on Friday night. You've seen a lot. This has been a really semi-incredible year, and I said semi-incredible from almost unbelievable in these terms. I've never seen schools play so well and yet be on the edge of, let's say, not even getting the playoffs. For example, this year, you look, Allen will probably have a good little playoff run. Plano East should have beat them. Marcus will probably have a pretty good little playoff run. Plano should have beat them. Sometimes the luck just doesn't go your way. Have you ever seen a season quite like this one?
Not with as much balance as there is. We kind of anticipated this really when we were put in this district with Louisville and Allen, that the Louisville schools have a great program, and Allen obviously. It's really not too surprising, and I think most coaches in the district, the one I visited with them both in Plano and outside, feel the same way. It's just going to be week to week. It's going to be right down to the wire. And the ones I talked to predicted this, and I didn't know whether they were shooting level with me or just giving me the coach's perspective on things, because you always talk about we're in the best district, but this truly is one of the most competitive districts as far as football is concerned, and many of the other sports as well. So it is just a week to week thing, and you're going to barely get there or barely miss getting there. I think the teams are so well balanced.
Well, we won't argue that, Coach. Always great to see you. Thanks for taking the time to visit with us.
Thank you, Kevin.
Okay, I'll tell you what, when we return, we'll visit with Coach Tom Kimbrough. Stay with us here, listening and watching the Plano Independent School District Sports Network.